biology first. I know, it's better at the beginning.
Welcome all to the monthly podcast for the La Mesa Early Childhood Discussion Group. My name is Wayne Fagan, by the way. I'm chair of D. Howard International Education Foundation. Our moderator this afternoon, as always, on the Early Childhood Discussion Group is John Green Otero, who is the Chief Innovation Officer of Pre-K for SA. He's joined by Sarah Heinrich, who is the Innovation Coordinator for Pre-K for SA, and John will introduce our special guest, who's sitting right in the middle. So, John, it's over to you then. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wayne, and welcome everyone. As Wayne said, I'm John Green Otero, and I'm joined here by Sarah Heinrich. What we're so excited to have today is our special guest, Zanel Pisato. Zanel began her 14-year journey in education by creating a daycare setting because she was disappointed with the options for early childhood STEM in her area. That endeavor blossomed into what is now Nature and STEM Kids College. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And I think everyone who is here with us to join the conversation, whether you're here live with us or following up with us in the recording, remember, if you are here live, to use the raised hand icon for reactions, also available today at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Today, we're going to be talking about what makes a STEM program truly high quality. So pull up a chair and join us at La Mesa, where educators gather to discuss topics around STEM education and early childhood. All right, so to kick us off, you like to be called Miss Z.
Yes.
So Miss Z, tell us a little about yourself. Tell us what got you into both early childhood and specifically focusing on STEM education.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. It's an honor to be here, to be able to talk about my experience and what our program, Nature and STEM Kids College, has accomplished over the years. And so I started this program out of a need, because I had a wonderful job in the airport, the aerospace department or industry. And so once I had my third child, I have 4 kiddos.
Beautiful.
4 kiddos, big family, love kiddos. And so once I had my third child, it was a decision whether to join the workforce again, or stay home and care for him. And so, of course, I seek back into the workforce and work again. But unfortunately, after visiting more than 12, 13 centers, something was always lacking. Probably I'm not at all a very strict parent or very demanding. I'm just a normal parent who wants the best for their child. And so out of that need, could not find what we were looking for. So I created my own program.
Beautiful. I love it. I mean, and that story is such a common story for a lot of people who started either family care settings or child development centers, where they have a very particular unique background, like your STEM background, and they say, well, I really want to have a particular kind of educational experience. And so that you had that, entrepreneurial spark. You did it. It's amazing. I love it.
It's been a journey.
I can only imagine. It's not easy.
It's not. No, it's not. No,
it's not.
It's been amazing, but not
so
easy.
Tell us a little more. So you came from a STEM background. Why did you decide that a STEM Kids College was the right flavor of early childhood for you and the children in your life?
So my son, my 14-year-old now son, he loves Legos. He loves to build. He's creative. He has that engineering brain, which I experienced. I am not an engineer. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration. However, I worked around engineers. So I learned to think like them. And my son, when he was born, automatically thought like an engineer. And so I stayed home with him, cared for him, decided to focus on him. And I saw that this need and this talent he had, I had been seeing in other children. Like I've always planned the birthday parties. I was the life of the party. And so we started that because he loved garden. He loved the STEM, and I love gardening. And so together he would say, Mom, why don't we create this? Why don't we build this? And so we put all those talents and skills together and added more kiddos to the after school program, what we called it, from the house. And it just grew from there. And I saw the need for other parents to be part of something, not just for care, not just to leave my child in a location or a place, but to actually challenge my child and work around their skills, the skills that they already had, and build on that.
You know, you bring up so many great topics that we in early childhood are always talking about, right? Well, centering a child's unique gifts, right? You talked about that, thinking about every child having, you know, rather than us having to fill that bucket, right, Sarah? But that they come prescribed, right? But whatever you want to call it, with their own perspectives, views, you know, predispositions, desires. And so the early childhood programs like yours that really try and center, okay, well, if a child is really interested, like my son, for example, every machine in the world is interesting to him. Now, that might be just a 3-year-old thing right now, and it might be a forever thing, right? We don't know. But our job isn't to get away with that, right? So I love that you centered that for your children, as well as something that I think, if we put on our educator hats for a second, that I really love when educators like you talk about how important it is to think like an engineer, because we have a system, right? The education system naturally really pushes us into a literacy framework when we think about how much we spend time testing and talking about literacy, which is important. Right? Zero question that literacy is important. But every great thinker, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson is one of my favorite current thinkers in the science world, talks about how the maths and the sciences literally change the way your brain think about the world, how they approach problems, how they assess difficulties, how they deconstruct or reconstruct. And so I really do think there's immense value to thinking about what the benefit to your mind, how your mind approaches the world through the math and sciences. So I'm going to use that as our catalyst to get to our initial question. How do you define high quality when it comes to STEM in an early childhood setting? What is when you're looking, so you originally told us the catalyst for why you started this program is that you were looking for a program, you didn't find what you were looking for. You didn't find the level of quality you're looking for. So how do you define quality when it comes to STEM in early childhood?
Well, I define quality as a will to offer what the child needs. Mm-hmm. First of all, there's foundational needs for children. And so we can talk about STEM all day. However, children need basic things.
Yes.
And so in a program, for it to be a quality program, let's leave STEM aside for a minute.
Yes, of course.
They need to be nurtured. They need to be accepted for who they are. First of all, loved, welcome every day when they come in, and the adults being happy for them to be there. They have to feel accepted, first of all. And then now the quality comes in when the educator understands that that child will benefit from the STEM program, from the STEM education. Now, how do you define quality? Quality is when an educator seeks more. They don't just conform to, well, we're doing science, technology, engineering, and math. And that means we do an experiment, we mix colors, or we use a phone. No, it's more than that. It's to use every single opportunity where that child might be, like we do in our center, washing their hands. And now we're thinking, okay, if we mix red and this other color, what does that make? Is taking every opportunity that you have to turn that into a teachable moment with a child. Of course, an educator should educate themselves throughout the different sciences there are within STEM, but not focusing just on one, but on the interest of the child, the children that they have in their classroom. Every time there is a different child in there, you have to look for their interest. So I think quality would be defined into, first of all, the interest of the educator to want more for their children, and then seek what those activities could be tailored to that specific child.
I love it. So you're talking about really grounding in the educator's natural curiosity, right? And their natural willingness to grow and find those opportunities. I love that. so much of what we talk about in early childhood, right, is the adult-child interaction. But we can sometimes sterilize that conversation into something that's just, to your point, around kind of checking the box. Like, am I responding? Am I echoing? Am I parroting these things? But there's something much more beautiful and nuanced than what you just articulated, which is actively engaging in that child's experience and thinking about how can I, and sometimes be a little one step ahead of them and make sure that if they're washing their hands, what can we do to imagine what is happening there? Whether it's the blending of colors, whether it's viscosity, right? Like the friction of your hand before or after applying soap, all of which are really interesting ways in which children are exploring the world. And then partner that with how do you then tailor that educator's curiosity to the child's experience, right? Like, how are we making sure each child is getting their needs met? I love that. Both two exemplar ways in which we think about high quality. Sarah, what do you think? What is your?
Well, I have a certain curiosity around. I know that especially when you are starting your own facility, you're starting your own care center. Sometimes we have a tendency to relate highly resourced with high quality, right? And so I think when you're getting started in that space, what are things that you would, when you reflect on your practice, or that you advise other people who are getting into a focus on STEM? What are things that they could do that don't require necessarily monetary resources to hit those high quality points? And you talked a great deal about educator curiosity, educator desire, that underlying hope for children, and that curiosity both around their own practice, but also children's support. But on a concrete kind of level, what kind of things would you advise anybody who's listening in, that they could say, you know what, you don't have to have a lot of money. You can do this, this, and this, and start doing high quality with your kids?
Recyclable materials. My number one go-to. We have a specific section in our school where we have water bottles, where we have cereal boxes, where we have egg cartons, where we have scissors that you can turn into magnet. You have a lemon that you can make a light bulb with. So you don't have to spend anything. You just ask for, or look around your house, or look around your center for things that you would normally already have there. A lot of our homework is to bring a water bottle to school, or bring a bring a bottle, soda bottle. So it does not have to cost you a thing. It is free because those are resources that you would normally throw away or put in the recycling bin. You should. But yes, it does not have to cost you a lot. I actually purchased some books off of Amazon that are about engineering in early childhood education, about robotics in early childhood education, about science. We reached out to a parent who is a photographer, and we asked him, will you come and give us a lesson about how to use a camera? And we talked about lighting. We talked about how to take a camera apart and put it back together. So it does not have to cost you. You just have to look around you, see what resources you have, go outside and you can literally
natural material.
Exactly. I just love the concept that we bring into our program, because we teach parents, other than teaching children, we also teach parents that they can do STEM at home as well. And you would see the light in their faces when they say, with a water bottle, with a box. Oh, wow. You can build with straws. You can build a tower. Straws, I would not suggest marshmallows because they eat them. You use Play-Doh. Exactly. You can make Play-Doh at home. You don't even have to buy Play-Doh. So there is so many ways to simplify STEM. STEM does not have to be complicated. I know a lot of people think that you have to be an architect, an engineer, and a scientist. No. You are your own architect at heart. And so I would say recyclable, just to summarize it, recyclable materials, research books at the library. You don't even have to buy them. Go to your local library. And also look into the resources, your parents, their experiences, what they do for a living. Yes. Bring them in as a resource.
Mm-hmm. I love that piece. Families as a resource for any kind of high quality is invaluable, and I think sometimes overlooked in a way that it shouldn't be, because even if your families are not necessarily self-aware of the resources that they can bring that are STEM education for young children, we are aware, and there are lots of tie-ins that you can do to bring that together.
Yes. Oh, yes, I agree. Totally.
Yeah, I agree completely. So how do you approach helping your educators who may or may not come from, like, do you have new teachers ever come into your program and you have a particular professional learning pathway you take them through to sort of build that commitment to STEM? Because I'm hearing you loud and clear. It doesn't take necessarily having some advanced science degree to dial into this, right? So don't be afraid of that. And so how do you build the will then, right? If the skill isn't the issue, how do you build the will?
We are educators, so show them and they will fall in love with it. You don't have to have somebody buy into what you do. You just have to show them the possibilities and what they can do. And to experience that with a child, you just fall in love with it. Because when a child sees a volcano explode, oh, it's a mess. You have to clean it up. However, that experience, that gratification that child gets out of accomplishing that, it's amazing, and it is contagious. Yeah. And so before we require them to do it, we show them, and they fall in love with it. And so we have different curriculums that we have in place to be able to help them create their own lessons. We don't just give our teachers our lessons. We do so much in our school that if there's not one cookie cutter curriculum that we can say we are going to use, that we're bilingual, so we teach the children Spanish and English. We are nature driven and STEM focused, and so there's not one place I can go and say, okay, I'm going to do that this way. So we have to create our own. So we ask for input. We start getting their curiosity. We start asking them to help us create it so that they can feel capable of doing it. And anything that they think it's a good idea, we try it. If it doesn't work, we'll try again. If it works, great, let's do it more.
Yes.
And so we celebrate them. We make them part of. We don't just impose.
I love that. So you're really designing your own curriculum there.
Yes.
Do you ever have opportunities to work with other people where people are coming to you and saying, hey, I want you to come teach us how to make our program even better, right? Because to your point, if you went out into the field, whether you were a mom or starting your own business or, now 15 years in, and you're not seeing those resources available, do people reach out to you and say, hey, can you help me understand? Do you do trainings? How do people tap into the brilliance?
Yes. So we had our first opportunity in a conference hosted by Trace of a Child. And Sharon, she's the CEO, Sharon Scallion, amazing coach. She has been my mentor for many, many years. She's wonderful. She hosted a conference, and she asked for me to host that specific class about nature activities for educators in Spanish. And so I did. It was my first experience. It was amazing. You would see the light in the eyes of the educators about aha moments of, wow, I can do that. I can implement that. After that class, I've been reached out to many, many ways so that teachers, educators can implement those in their classrooms. We are also in the works of starting a resource page in our website, free. I don't want to make money out of this because there's so many opportunities for children. I believe every child would benefit from these resources. I just want to pile them in one place so that they can easily be found, easily be implemented. A quick moment where you're maybe have a lesson plan designed and it doesn't work, it's not having the results you wanted. Let me really quickly tap into that activity with simple materials that you don't have to purchase. They're not expensive. You find them where, the location you're in. And so we're looking to be a place where people can come to us to gather information and then find more resources. There's a ton of activities out there, sometimes not appropriate for early childhood, like the itty bitty ones, but there are a lot of opportunities to implement those into your classroom, to scaffold it down too.
I love it. Well, maybe if you're open to it, we can get the link and connect it to the podcast. So if someone's interested, they can get access to it.
We'd love to. Yes.
Amazing. And not to deviate us too far off topic, but when I was thinking about what you were saying, I was thinking about the role, which is such a hard thing for educators, I think, to think about, boredom when it comes to creativity, right? When it comes to inspiration. And I think of my own childhood, in some ways, I didn't have as much access and resource as a lot of other children, but in other ways, I don't know if this was the same for you, why you fell in love with nature-based things. I grew up outdoors. I grew up turning rocks, climbing trees, right? We were latchkey kids in a lot of ways. Your parents were working, so they just sort of sent you off. And I would spend entire summers and weekends turning over. I remember famously my sister got into soccer. And so my mother was trying to get her into classes. She thought, oh, well, I'll have John join. And I had zero interest in soccer. And so what happens is they make you the goalie when you're not the good at soccer. And so every time the other children would come to make a goal, John wouldn't be there at the soccer goal. He'd be turning rocks and looking for bugs, right? And it's this spirit that I think you're trying to cultivate, recultivate in an era where children have been, again, removed from that natural environment. And I'm not even saying in a way that I think is disparaging or shameful for families. I know why, right? Like all kinds of factors have pushed us out of natural places into apartments, into complexes, into concrete structures that make it harder and harder for us to just have a day barefoot, running around in the dirt, climbing trees, scraping knees, all that good stuff, right? But I love that educators like you are thinking about how do we change that? How do we create more spaces? Because I do think there's something powerful about it. And I do think there's something really natural that connects with us as human beings when we're able to get our hands dirty, scrape our knees, all that good stuff. Like I love bugs. I used to catch them all the time, drove my parents crazy. I can tell you crazy stories, me bringing home all kinds of things. I told Sarah tons of them. But going down this line, sort of one of the things that I think a lot of us educators have a lot of mixed feelings about is the role of technology when it comes to these spaces, right? How do you, and this isn't a trick question, I'm just curious, educator, like, what do you think about the role of technology when it comes to these spaces, right? Because it kind of feels like they're in opposition to each other, right? Mm-hmm. We do all this work to get children off screens because the screens are everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. What's your personal philosophy on it?
First of all, CDC guidelines say that children should not be watching any screens until the age of 3. And at age 3, it's about 1 to 2 hours per day.
Yes.
And so they are exposed for various reasons to screen time, which they shouldn't be. It's not good for their development. And so how we handle that in our school, we have absolutely no TVs.
Yes.
No TVs at all. The only tablets that we use are for teachers. And so once the child is enrolled in our school, it's hard. It's a little hard because they see a tablet and they run towards it. It's a magnet.
Right.
However, we teach them that this is a teacher's tablet. And little by little, they understand that even if they see something that it's a screen, it's for them to listen to music.
Right.
Exactly. So we use them in ways that is constructive to them. We do have a technology learning center in our school, which is a the projector that they can take together, take apart and put together. Oh. That's the part of technology they use that for. We have a cell phone where it doesn't work. They can prop up and act and drum and
do dramatic play.
Exactly. They can act like they're recording themselves while we're doing our dancing and movements in the morning.
Right.
So just to say that you can have technology. We have like the camera example that I was telling you about with the parent. They know how the camera works. It's not just the phone that takes the picture. There's an actual camera. So they know the concept. We teach the concept, but we pull them away from using the screens because they will get that at home, unfortunately.
Oh, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think there's something that I love to encourage educators, because there are educators that come to me, and I'm sure this is true for both of you as well, who will say, like, I want this never technological world, right? We've got technology everywhere. I want my child to be technologically literate, all that good stuff. But I think, to your point, there's so many ways to engage with technology without necessarily having to, get stuck in those dopamine loops that can be really problematic for our children, right? And this is something, I'm a big neuroscience guy. I'm a big guy when it comes to like how the brain is developing in these stages and how the mirror neural network works, right? Like why connection matters so much for our children. And so to me, it's grounded in that. And that's the easy way to make the argument to anyone who comes up and says it. But I love the way you pair that with, that doesn't mean that they can't take something apart. That doesn't mean we can't talk about fundamental concepts around coding, because coding you can talk about without a technology piece, right? There's so many ways for us to think about the sciences, the, engineering, any of the things that we want our kids to start to get their minds wrapped around without having to say, okay, watch this video on it, right?
Solar power energy.
Solar power energy. Yes, absolutely, right? So I love that approach. Glad that you're showing some practical applications to it. Makes a lot of sense to me.
And so I wanted to add, you don't just take something away and not replace it. You can replace that with the other experiences, like the urban farm that we're starting, and so excited to
tell me more about the farm.
Yes, so the urban farm, and coming up fall 2026, we're adding animals, like farm animals, to our program. Right now we have fish. That's it, because that's the easiest thing to do, to add animals to your program so they can see what real animals look like. We had a stick bug. Unfortunately, it went on vacation, so it will come back next Thursday.
There you go. Yes.
It's
always a parent's best thing to hear. Is like, oh, you lost it in the house.
We've had guinea pigs before. We are waiting for a farm to have their first litter of bunnies, and so we have the chicken coop. It's a chicken coop, but it's going to be a running hutch soon. To have our first bunnies there, and with the urban farm, we'll be able to add fruit trees so that they can actually see how a fruit tree grows and how it develops and what the fruits of it are. We'll also have more, of course, gardening sections there, but we wanted to add a goat. We wanted to add chickens. We wanted to add, or quail. We're deciding whether we do chicken or quail. We want to consider. We want to consider the neighbors. So
sure. Duck. My brother had ducks, and they actually weren't that. They're pretty respectful and quiet.
Oh yeah. Okay. Awesome. Then we might think of those two, that option. And so
chickens.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. And so we wanted to add that concept of an urban farm. We don't just garden and grow food and know that fruit doesn't come from the grocery store. We can actually grow it.
I love that.
And see the whole cycle of it. And sometimes you plant things and they don't grow, as I experienced as a child. And so we want to replace that need of that side of technology and screen time for something more tangible.
But again, back to your point that you made at the onset of our conversation. But what great opportunities for you to talk about chemistry when it comes to soil composition, right? Engineering when it comes to construction and the tools you need, right? Biology.
So much biology.
Right. So much biology, right?
Yeah.
It's a great way. And every, whether you're talking about, TEA or any certification program across the United States when it comes to high quality education, they want you to see things that are really grounded in real life experiences, really grounded in children's interests, really grounded in practical applications and building on knowledge, right? And so I love that you're creating the conditions for children to have those experiences as the alternative. And I know people will say, look, well, you can watch these things. That's not how you cultivate real understanding, right? Seeing something isn't the same as experiencing something.
Especially at such a young age.
Oh my goodness, yes. I would, so much of what I think about what I would love for my children is a lot of what we got and didn't think about a lot growing up, even if you didn't come from wealth, of just sort of being out in the world, right? Doing things normally. People, at least where we grew up, people had chickens and goats and cows all over the place. And so, it's lovely to see more and more programs like yours really thinking about getting excited about this. We do here at Pre-K 4SA a garden table program, which I'm sure is a lot like what you're thinking about with the garden piece, not the animal piece. And it's about exposing children to foods. It's about having them understand exactly what you're talking about, where their food comes from, why you take care of the soil to grow the plant, take care of the plant, to harvest the food, to then do something. They go into the classroom and they actually cook something with the food. It's an amazing experience, right?
Well, and that understanding of process of like, this didn't work and why didn't it work
Right.
and what can we do differently? What are the variables that are going on?
Why did this seed
here?
grow and this
Then
seed
what
not
didn't?
grow? Right? It's such a robust space to be in. I love it. I'm so excited. I hope you're documenting the process so that people can see, because I do think it's helpful for people to see it. Sometimes when someone's successful like you does something, people think, oh, well, she's just gifted. She's just brilliant. She's right. People do that though. People,
it is
you
true.
see,
Mhm.
Sarah and I talk about this all the time. I read this really great book that I love talking about because I loved it. It's called Topside. But the fundamental revolutionary concept in the book that I love is this idea that sometimes as human beings, we see someone like you who are doing something innovative, who are pushing the field, and we go, well, of course they can. They're brilliant, or they have unique gifts that I don't have. And you're so generous and humble in this space here because what you've done for us is sort of dismantled all of this is accessible. You've used these great examples. Go to the library. Here's where you begin. Instead of throwing that away, recycle it into your program and do these things, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine what you can create in this space with this urban farm and start small. Fish tank. Like, you're such a great educator in that way. Like, every time you gave an example, you were like, and here's your entry point. It's just so good. So good. But
I wanted to, well, we're at 4:30, so we're doing real good. But I wanted to bring the conversation back around to technology and the examples that you were talking about, because I think it's really easy for parents to not realize, for families to not realize, and for educators in some spaces to not realize that the technology that we have is a tool. Mm-hmm. And children will be more successful using technology as they get older as a tool if they understand those foundational pieces of why, right? I can use this tool, I can use this screen to observe, to measure, to data collect, to help me parse the data. But they have to understand the process of what are the fundamentals of why. What is the scientific thinking? And I think that when we put those screens away, especially when they're very small, it really gives them that opportunity to explore how and why, especially if, as you stated, we have educators who are curious in their own right and motivated in their own right to do the thinking and to do the thinking in parallel with the children.
Mm-hmm. Children naturally gravitate towards adults that give them attention. Mm-hmm. And so if you are in front of a screen, you don't have to interact with your parents. You don't have to interact with anyone because your brain is occupied in the screen.
It's getting that feedback from
that's right,
a non-responsive source.
Exactly. Right. And so I invite parents to just put the devices down and buy a scale and just start measuring things with your child. It's that simple. Yeah. A scale, an electronic or digital.
Yeah. That's the word, like the digital scales that will give you
the food scales, and start measuring your foods and start that taps into nutrition, that taps into technology, and so it's simple. It's very simple, but it comes after a decision. After you decide that you are going to do what is best for your child, because they will be adults later and they need to be able to socialize with others, be able to have that eye contact, be able to express emotions. And through a screen, you're losing all those skills. You might not be even learning them.
Right.
And so technology is very important, like you said, as a tool. Children don't need technology. They don't need screen time at this moment. They need to use technology in a way that is constructive and building skills for them at that age, age appropriate activities.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, even if we fast forward to this AI era that we're in, the biggest issue that I see time and time again that people either in the AI field or in education or even just people in the corporate setting talking and complaining about AI, right, is the use of the tool, right? Most of the time, correct me if I'm wrong, people aren't going, oh, I'm upset that it even exists. Most of the time, they're talking about inappropriate use cases where someone is using the tool without applying their brain without thinking about either reviewing the document or questioning where its sources are. And I know if either you have used it at all, I've used it, of course. I see things pop up all the time that I'm like, that's incorrect. What are you talking about? You know? And it's so funny. Quick anecdote. When I ask AI, I was like, this is wrong, right? It goes, oh yeah, good catch. You know? But it goes back to your point around where does that learning fundamentally come from? It starts when you're young. And on top of everything that you both so eloquently put forth, the thing that I always think about, back to, you know, my personal like love of the way the brain develops, is that you can measure the ability for a child to be patient in the amount of tissue in certain regions of the brain. And so when you spend time learning to sit in that productive struggle, when you spend time learning to be patient as the plant grows, right? Where you spend time not immediately getting that feedback of, I see these bright colors, I hear these fun sounds. Your brain is actually thickening. It's getting stronger and better. And the space between those neural receptors grow. And so it can be measured in a very real way. And I bring that all up just because we have this funny thing as adults looking at a generation, and we're sort of looking at them and we're criticizing them for like, oh, well, they're not patient. Right? Oh, they can't, they don't appreciate, you know, what it takes to put in time and effort, you know, that delayed gratification conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And yet we facilitated that. In a lot of ways, we as a society, we put forth this amazing tool without really putting the parameters like you're talking about, without really thinking about what are those parameters we need to put in place to be really useful. Whereas almost every other tool, we wouldn't do that with a car, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a whole structure around.
Wouldn't do it with a saw.
Wouldn't do that with a saw, right?
True.
It's fascinating. There's something about technology and its intersection with entertainment, or whatever way you want to articulate it, that has changed the way. Like I remember when the iPhone first came out, and I got so excited because I was like, "Oh, great! I no longer have to carry a camera and a calculator and a cell phone, right? Like all these things that I would have, like not that I don't hate fanny packs. They're not as bad as people say they are.
I was going to go utility belts.
I almost said utility belt, but fanny pack is actually closer to reality. But it just became, to the point that you both are making, this amazing tool. But because they embedded entertainment into it, it's kind of lost something powerful, right? In the way in which we haven't done a good enough job as society, back to both of your points, in preparing children how to use that tool effectively. I mean, so many times I thought about, you know, if an electromagnetic pulse hit the earth, right, and all technology vanished, we couldn't even recreate these things, right? I mean, some could maybe, but the amount of time it would take is really long because we have to build it from scratch because we don't teach children the fundamentals. We don't teach them how these signals work. We don't teach them how to take them apart, put them back together. Whereas when we were younger, we might have. And so I love the centering of that. I think it's really, really important. And I do think it's important for families to think about, you know, and I say this to families too, so I want you all to hear this. It's not a judgment. Like we understand that there are times where, you know, you're at home alone, you've got lots of children, you might use strategically screens to do a thing, right? Get dinner ready, something, right? But I think that it's all about intention, and you have to think about the cost versus the benefit, and you have to think about how much time you're using because there is a long-term impact, right?
Yes.
So
it's funny you talk about the brain. I just started the process for our center to be trauma informed.
Oh,
and so it's all about the brain.
I know. I love Zaretta Hammond's work. I love Bruce Perry's work around, but please tell me what you love. I can stop talking.
Yes, well, we're in the initial stages, and we are doing the certification through the ecumenical center. There's a ton of resources there. Love that place. You should check it out.
I believe we already have done some work with them. So we have our social emotional learning team
Right.
has been going through the trauma informed, and it's it is transformative work.
It is, yeah. The knowledge you get from sitting in a class and educating yourself about how the brain works. It just starts all with the brain.
That's right.
And so it's an amazing certification that we're going through.
I second that plug. I think it's really important. You know, it's another way of going back to some of the questions we were talking about on how to invest, either for yourself as an individual educator, as a parent, as someone who's leading a group of educators. I think the more you invest in your understanding around any area of STEM, and I think brain science is really cool because not only does it talk about behaviors, like why is this behavior coming up from a neurological perspective, but it also will help you be more intentional with how you support whatever direction you're going, whether it's an individual direction, right? Because we all have coping mechanisms and regulating systems and all this stuff. And so the better you, even as a leader, can think about the humans that you serve, right, from this lens, I really personally find it to be a tremendous tool. Just like anything else, where you're learning more, you're just going to do better, right? What's that famous quote? You do
know better, do better.
Know better, do better.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. So what is, remind me, what is the duration of this training? Where are you hoping to go with Thank you Medical Center?
I already took my personal certification, so done that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Already trauma-informed certified.
That's right.
But for the school, it's a whole process. It's not just, take these classes and you're certified. No, it's a process because they want to ensure that you're putting this new knowledge into your policies.
Right.
You're implementing them into your families, that you're getting their feedback. There's a survey they have to complete, your teachers as well. And so it's not just one person having the idea and getting a certificate. No, It's an all center certification, and that they come in and they make sure that they also observe your centers, and that in every space in your classroom, there is that inclusion, that is that openness to understand what that child is going through, and not traumatize them more with our own biases or own experiences.
Right.
So it's an eye-opening process. It is not easy. It's a lot of work, administrative and in the physical space. It's so worth it because you are going to be able to understand your demographics.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not about us. It's about who we serve.
I'm going to ask you this question, but I'll answer it first, just to give you a second to think about it, because I'm super curious, and it could be multiple things. But like, my question is, what is the thing that you personally got out of your journey towards this certification? I know I went through the neurosequential model for education with Bruce Perry's team many years ago, and I personally, to your point, I agree completely with this idea that just like any interrogation of your own view, it's a lot of a personal lift. It's a lot of an interrogation of sometimes even your own journey. Sometimes even like, where are the places in which you have blind spots, where you overfunction, underfunction, because that awareness helps you bring a well of compassion to everyone in your life, right? Because as an educator, I remember the big one for me was when I realized that every behavior was an opportunity for connection. Every behavior was a child trying to say, I have a need. That's right. And that was such a powerful shift for me as an early childhood educator, because it's not that I can't, I think all of us get into this with a deep love of children and a deep desire to be in service, right? Whether it's to a community, to families, to whatever.
But we get in our own way sometimes.
Oh my goodness, do we? Right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, do we? And we're human. And so we have feelings and hardships and all those things. But once I could sit in that place, it was like this never-ending spring in terms of water, like this never-ending reservoir opened up, because part of the challenge, and I don't know if this is for you or anyone out there listening, is that to this get in your own way place, is that our expectations limit us. Right? When you think a child is supposed to do X, right? Without even really meeting a child, you really limit the capacity and true beauty of what you could do for that child and that family, what that child's possibility is. So it revolutionized my way of thinking completely. But I'm curious, what is sitting with you right now, having gone through this? that you'd love to share?
The ACEs.
Tell me. Yeah.
Yes. So I realized, because they have you take a survey before you do anything. And so I self-reflected
Yes.
and started to understand my own trauma.
Yes.
And I have great parents, and I don't have anything that I can say, no, I was traumatized. No, I grew up in a really healthy community that supported my entire family. And so I realized that maybe a natural disaster might be a traumatic experience for a child.
Imagine that, right?
Yeah, just something as simple as lacking food.
Right.
And so things that we take for granted because we've had it, but
Right.
for a child who has gone through that experience, and we are in a hurry because, oh, breakfast over, it's 8:30 already, no, we're done. And we take that food away, and that child might not have a meal for the rest of their evening at home. And so I learned to be aware of my own traumas,
Yes.
my own reactions
Yes.
to certain things, and to really be compassionate to others,
Yes.
to be empathetic, to seek to understand and not judge.
That's right.
Children or parents, you never know what's happening behind closed
I
doors.
completely agree.
And we also want to be a place where parents feel that they can come to us and seek resources. We're not psychologists, we're not
Right. There's an
therapists.
important distinction for everyone, because I do think sometimes with our big hearts, you get into this brain science work and then you can stumble. I've seen great, brilliant people stumble into this place, and we're not psychologists. And so you have to be really careful, particularly with the adults,
Mhm.
not to open up something that you're not trained, right? Like a good therapist or a good, a psychiatrist is trained to be able to deal with really complex issues.
Mhm.
Educators, that's not our forte. That's not
Right.
what we're here to do,
We
right?
guide, we
We guide,
provide
exactly.
resources.
But it's an important thing to know, just like anything, to your point about being a guide. A guide knows the steps along the way. A guide knows the pitfalls. A guide knows, oh, that area is more dangerous than this area. Let's go down this path instead.
And just for clarity for our audience, when you refer to ACEs, you are talking about adverse childhood experiences?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm gonna bridge it back to the STEM space, because I think I think sometimes it's easy to sort of think of these things as distinct and separate, but I really think of them as the same, because part of this work that I think all of us, what's the predominant story we've always heard in the maths and sciences as you exit early childhood? So you hear that there's these predeterminate spaces where children fall, right? I bet we all have a story of a time when we said, I am or I'm not good at math, right? I am or I'm not. I remember calculus. I was like, not good at calculus. Even though my whole childhood, I thought I was brilliant at math. I was in the advanced math class. I could do the calculations in my head. I was always in trouble with my math teachers because they were like,
Show your work.
but I always thought, why? Like, I can do all these things without. But my point is that I think that this conversation around, particularly for educators, for leaders of systems, for parents, what are the ways in which your biases are showing up, right, in your work for your children? Because they can accidentally be a barrier for your children. Because if I can pass on that so easily to my child, if I think, oh, this light switch turns on and off and you are or not good at something. And it goes back to that resiliency conversation, that grit conversation, so I think it's a great plug. And I do highly recommend everyone out there who is even remotely interested in understanding why we think the way we think, why we respond the way we respond. I think it's a superpower tool to help you no matter what role you have in education, whether you're an educator, whether you're a parent, whether you're an administrator, whether you're just a big fan of the brain. Do it. And then come talk to me about it. Because Sarah has other work to do than be distracted by me asking her what she thinks about it.
No, those are the funnest conversations.
Those are the funnest conversations. Good coffee talk.
So we are coming to close to the end of our time together. We have last questions because I have one on my mind.
Oh, hit me with it. Yeah.
I mean, If you could give the families and educators who may be watching either right now or joining us later, what is one thing that if they were looking to be high quality STEM space, whether that's at home with their child or as a program or just as a classroom, what's the one thing that you'd be like, if I could just gift you this piece, what would it be?
Curiosity. A curious mind will not just conform to the first option that pops up in the computer on the search, but you will try to see why that works that way. That was my number one word when I was little. It was not no, it was why.
Yes.
But why? Okay, it works this way, but why?
I love that.
And so I kept digging deep, and it was not pleasant when I was little, but it kept me curious about how things can work or how it can be different or how I can improve it or why things happen that way. And so keep curiosity like that, and you will discover a lot of great things. You will learn to use your brain to explore more.
What is it they say? Most of the time, if you have the will, you can develop the skill.
That's right.
Yes.
I believe that. It reminds me of a really divisive question that I used to ask when I was leading professional learning. And I usually start any series that I had with my educators, and I would ask a question in some formulation. I'm going to butcher it. I usually would spend a lot of time thinking about the perfect way to say it, but it was some version of, what do you prefer? A good question or the right answer? And like any good question to incite a conversation, there was no right answer, right? But it was a great conversation. Usually what I would do is I'd make us move around the room, and I'd put the questions on the opposite ends of the room, so people would move with their bodies and stand in the position because they had to make an assertion like, this is what I think, right? And it was so fun to see the different ways of thinking show themselves up in the room, because some people would be definitive, yep, the right answer always. Right? Some people would always go to the opposite side. No, just a good question. Take curiosity. I just want to understand why. And some people would find themselves in between. But to your point, I think that both this notion of interrogating how you think and because you could be a great teacher and be a concrete sequentialist, right? Like someone who, I think of my wife is a concrete sequentialist. She is, give me the list, give me the order, I will do it right. Right? I'm much more fluid. I'm like, everything's gray. There is no black and white, everything's gray. And so I think both are really powerful ways of living in the world, and both have tremendous value in this world. But to your beautiful point, you have to be aware of it, right? And if you can cultivate curiosity in the young, you'll have more agile, flexible, curious workforce, future
Innovators for the future.
innovators, right? All the things that we know we need.
We are brain architects.
We 100%. That we should end on that. We are brain architects. I love that.
Yes.
Well, do we have any questions before
The chat has been pretty quiet. We've got a lot of active listening going on.
Beautiful.
So,
Well, I just want to thank you again for coming and joining us. So wonderful, super fun. I hope you'll invite us out to when you open your urban school, because I'd love to see it.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, you
Yes.
should. It'd be a lot of fun. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, my co-host, for tuning in to our talks. Join us every third Thursday of the month to be a part of the conversation. Until next time.